Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadavaktaya Namo Namaha. Om Aganati Mirandasya Gyananjala Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I'm first of all offering millions and millions of Dandavat pranams unto the lotus feet of my most beloved Gurudev, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Asto Tarazara Shishimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And the same again millions and millions of times unto the lotus feet of our beloved Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Asto Tarazara Shishimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And all our Rupanuga Guru Varga and all the Vaishnava and Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord, my Dandavat pranams to all of you. Okay. So, yesterday we started the 11th chapter. So we're going to do this today. It's quite intense, so you have to listen very carefully to the descriptions. I'll ask you questions as we go along. So we have to sit on top of it. Okay, we'll do the Falshruti first. So we're into the second verses. Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai, Jaiva-dharma ki jai, Falshruti ki jai, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.
Jadedvaita Jnana Haya Chita Upadaya Krishna Bhakti Chiradina Upaya Upaya.
Such knowledge which is solely related to the duality of this dull material world is fit to be rejected.
That basically means that anything to do with this material world doesn't have any consequence or value in the world of transcendence. We are just like travelers passing through, waiting to connect with transcendence. So this is all described as duality.
Whereas transcendental knowledge of the divine duality within the spiritual world, Chit Jagat, should be accepted forever within one's heart, both as the Upai, the means of attainment, and the Upai, goal worthy of attainment.
So the duality in the spiritual world is that I am still there and Krishna is still there. This is the duality of the material world, the Jiva and Krishna. So in the spiritual world, there's also the Jiva and Krishna. So there's this dynamic of the relationship between the two. So that is described as dualistic. So there's still two. But in this world, there's three Vastus because there's Maya. But in the spiritual world, there's also three because there's Yoga Maya. But the principal duality is that there's Jiva as the Ashraya, Krishna as the Vishaya. So this is the duality in the spiritual world.
Jiva Kabu Jadenai Hari Kabu Nai Hari Saha Jiva Chintya Beda Beda Mai.
The Jiva is not a product of dull matter, nor is he Keval Advaita, absolutely in all ways with Sri Hari.
So we've discussed this point in detail. I hope you've taken notes and remember this. The 7 or 9 is Gyan Swarup, Nata Swarup, Bhakti Swarup, Mantri Swarup, Para Prakash, Swaprakash, Ketra Gyan, Ichamai. These similarities between the Jiva and Krishna and the distinct quantitative difference. This is what we always appreciate. The similarities, and this is what Achintya, Beda means difference, Abeda, non-difference. So get it really clear. The Jiva?
The Jiva is inconceivably different and non-different from Hari.
So this, in principle, this is what frustrated Ganesh when he was writing the Bhagavatam for Vyasadeva. There's that verse, Vedanti tat tattva vedas tattvam yajnanam advayam brahmati parametmati bhagavan iti shabhyate. So this is saying that Krishna is one, but he's appearing to be three. So Ganesh, he couldn't understand that. And they had a contract before he started writing, because Ganesh said to Vyasadeva, when Vyasadeva requested him to write, he said, only Ganesh said to Vyasadeva, his was the first condition, that you don't stop speaking. You speak these 18,000 verses, 1800 verses, and don't stop speaking. So Vyasadeva responded, all right, I won't stop speaking, but I make a pledge with you that you have to understand everything I'm writing, everything I'm speaking. So when he came to this verse in the second chapter, 11th verse of the first canto, he couldn't understand how God can be one and three at the same time. And he broke his pen while he was trying to think about it. And he didn't understand that. So it's called Vyasa Kuta. Kuta means puzzle. So at that point, he breaks his tusk, and then he continues writing the Bhagavatam like that. So he had to understand that point. So this difference and distinction is not an easy subject matter to really appreciate deeply, that we have a part of Krishna within us, a particle, but it's nothing like the quantity that Krishna has. So we have to appreciate these things.
Deha Kabu Jivanai, Dara Bhogyanai, Dasa Bhogya Jiva Krishna Prabhu Bhokta Hai.
The material body should never be considered to be the jiva, and this earth is not for the jiva to exploit and enjoy. The jiva's swarup is Krishna Das, and thus he is meant for Krishna's enjoyment, whereas Sri Krishna's swarup is Prabhu, master, and Bhokta, enjoyer.
Why is this so hard to understand?
Because we are also a particle of Krishna.
Yes, and we also have this Ananda Vyasat. We are enjoyers. We have to enjoy, and if we don't get that transcendental direction to understand that I am the servant, the Ashraya, and that pleasure of serving, if we don't get that bliss of serving, then we have to look for the bliss of serving ourselves in this perverted reflection of this material Jad Anand, this material pleasure. So if I don't get that, I'm going to look for this. So therefore, it's not easy. We can talk about it all day, but how many of us actually understand it? That I'm not the enjoyer, because every step we take, we're planning, how will I enjoy the next 5-10 minutes? Will I get pleasure just in the fan? Just now we had like 5 hours with no power. So all the time, now I have pleasure because the body's cooling down again. So it's like, and then when am I going to eat? When am I going to sleep? When am I going to go for a walk? When am I going to do this? Me. So how are we to bring the mind to savor? That consciousness can only be ignited when we really seriously hear the Harikatha, the sweet pastimes of Krishna. Vikriditam brajavadubi itam cha Vishnu shradan vitu nushrunyat artavarenyam ya bhaktim param bhagavati pratilabhya karmam hridrogam asavapinoti acharena dira. That by hearing first, and then having kirtan of what we heard, Shravanam, Kirtanam, then Smaranam will come. Shravanam, hearing. And then Kirtan is what? It's speaking what you heard. Like Shukadev is speaking, that's Kirtan. And then Smaranam, remembrance will come. This is the first principle. And then Bhaktim Param Bhagati Lati, Hridrogam Asavapinoti, this disease of the heart, which is lust in all its different forms. Lust is not always just the gross lust, it's the subtle lust. It's this desire. Between us and the spiritual world is a river of desire, the Viraja river. Viraj. Raj means passion. It's the mode of passion, Rajagun. And Vi means without passion, Viraj. So it's the Viraja river, the river of desire between us and the spiritual world. So unless this material desire, which we call lust in every angle of it, is purified, and it can't be purified without the higher taste, parambrisvarane vartante. It's only with the higher taste that it will be purified. You can't become like a yogi and you can become like a yogi and just cross the viraja, but you stay on the very bottom of all the spiritual planets in Siddhaloka is the first planetary system where the yogis reside. And they reside in that eternal place, worshipping Paramatma feature. That's where the yogis go. And they have, by austerity, tried to negate, and they have had some success in that because they've managed to cross the Viraja River. But the simple path, the path for the bhaktas, is simply to understand all of these truths that we're talking about and practice realization of them. That means that every opportunity you try to understand, I'm not the body. We mustn't be weak all the time and caving in to the bodily demands and always feel, yes, to some degree, we can't just cut it. It's not possible just to cut it, but gradually, we should be coming out of this bodily concept of life. And we can only do that by repeatedly hearing, especially the beautiful Vrindavan pastimes and the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Govardhan, pastimes like Ratha Yatra, hearing all these pastimes again and again and again, filling the mind with the sweetness of Krishna's pastimes. And then we can separate ourselves from this material consciousness.
Jaiva-dharma nahi ache deha-dharma katha.
Jaiva-dharma nahi ache
Deha-dharma
deha-dharma katha.
nahi
Nahi ache
ache
Jaiva-dharma mayavada prata.
This book, entitled Jaiva-dharma, neither discusses matters related to the dead material body, nor does it propound the Mayavada doctrine of the Jiva's oneness with Brahm.
So Bhaktivinoda Thakur was making it very clearly a foul shruti. That means the fruit of hearing this. So the fruit of hearing this is not going to be that you get Mayavad appreciation or even Brahmavad appreciation. We understand the difference between Mayavad and Brahmavad. Mayavad, Vad means someone who supports the doctrine of Maya, Mayavad. And a Brahmavad is someone who supports the doctrine of Brahm, merging into the Brahmajyoti. So there's a big distinction between the two. A Brahmavad can be a theist, worshipper of God. A Mayavad is an atheist. So there's a big difference there. So this Jaiva-dharma is not supporting either of these. Actually, the conclusion, all these chapters we're doing so far, we've come to the 11th chapter and then the 12th chapter also. It's all about Sambandha Gyan. It's all been about relationship. We heard the relationship in the beginning with Vaishnava Das, with Sannyasi Thakur, his relationship by seeing that devotee dancing, and then by wanting to seek out the Vaishnavas, and then meeting Prem Das Babaji in Godrundweep, and then seeing Prem Das Babaji's bhajan, and then understanding about Ananga Manjari, Lalita, Saki, etc. And then in the second chapter, it's explaining about what is Nitya and what is Naimitika. These two distinctions are clearly put in the second chapter. Again, it's about this Sambandha, how to connect with Krishna, unless I know what is Nitya and what is Naimitic. And I've said repeatedly, just the same as the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita is also laying out the same first lesson. The first lesson in spiritual life is to know that I am spirit and not body. And that can take lifetimes to understand. But these first 12 chapters are all about this point of relationship. And then the third chapter, that naimitic dharma should be relinquished, should be given up forever. It has no there's no strength in that naimitic temporary existence, that dharma. This is what it's saying in the very beginning here, that all the first Falshruti, that all these dharmas are utterly deceptive. That's the first one. So in the fourth chapter, it's about Lahari Mahashai and his son, I think. And then the fifth chapter is, can't remember exactly. But the sixth chapter is the discussion between the Brahmins. What is the relationship between the Brahmins and the Vaishnavas? What is the relationship? Then in the seventh chapter, what is the relationship between general people like Chandidas and Damayanti with the Vaishnavas? And then in the eighth chapter, what is the relationship between the Vaishnavas themselves? What is Kanishta, Madhyam, Uttam, etc.? This is all in the eighth. In the ninth, what is the relationship with those who are not Vaishnavas, those atheists like Digambar? that don't believe. So that's described in the 9th. So, and then the 10th, we've just completed about the history. What is our relationship to history? It's all about relationship all the way through. This thread of Sambandha all the way through. And now we're going to be discussing what is the relationship with the Muslims or Islam. What is the relationship there? It's all relationship, 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 up until the 13th chapter when the Dasamula begins. And then it goes into the 10, we call them ontological truths that are going to be revealed by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, just to make it simple for us. This is all to make it simple. And then in the center of this book, we have the 3 chapters on Nam Tattva, because this is paramount to understanding that. And then the last 14 chapters are only about Rasa Tattva. This is the Prayojan. The Dasamula is the Abhideya, how to access these truths that we've learned as Sambandha Gyan. So this is like the whole book that I just mapped out a little bit.
Jiva nitya dharma bhakti tahe jada nahi.
Shuddha Jiva Prem Seva Phale Payatai. The Jiva's Nitya Dharma is bhakti, devoid of material motivation. The Jiva, purified by seva, attains the fruit of that seva in the form of prem.
Yes, seva, seva, seva. It's the seva. Seva is always in the present tense, right? You're doing service. That's in the present tense because the spiritual reality is in the eternal present. And if you're doing seva, you're connecting with your eternal self in the spiritual sense, right? And that pure seva is when we're able to have a feeling above. We're connecting with mood towards the service of the Vaishnavas, of Guru, of Krishna, of Radha, of the Dham, a mood of that seva bhav. So we have to be thinking like that. Okay, let's go to our chapter 11. So yesterday we just made the introduction, and all the Muslims, they came on their fine stallions, and then they created a beautiful atmosphere where the Vaishnavas came to answer their questions. It's and everything about their coming was very respectful. They came in a respectful way. They're inquiring in a respectful way. So in this mood of respect, then something can be attained during some sort of debate. If it's come with a challenge, like we had previously with Chudamani and the Brahmins, and then even with Nyayaratna in the last chapter, with something, or Digambar with some sort of, then nothing can really be learnt. But if it's with respect, so Bhaktivinoda Thakur is laying all this understanding for us, these subtleties within the pages. He's giving us the whole picture, experience of what is spiritual practice in this world. And unless this respectful behavior towards each other is there, then nothing can really be absorbed on the eternal platform. It's just completely mundane, material. I'm just going to read this one paragraph about the picture that he set up yesterday. This is on page 244. The mullah and his company were seated in the courtyard under the pleasant and cooling shade of a large banyan tree. When they saw the Vaishnavas approaching, the mullah and his party stood up cordially to receive them. Again, this is the mood of respect. Knowing all the jivas as servants of Krishna, the Vaishnavas in turn offered dandavat to Sri Vasudev, situated in the heart of the mullah and his associates. Very interesting. This is a lesson for us. Even if we're talking to a butcher, if we're trying to give some literature or something, I can remember when we used to sell the oil paintings, we would go into the butcher shop, show them the oil paintings, and we would have to train ourselves to see Krishna in the heart of the butcher. Otherwise, you would become disgusted. So the Vaishnavas are somewhat disgusted with the practices of the Muslims, that they kill the cow, although now it's prevalent all across India. Now the Hindus are actually killing the cows. Actually, India is #1 beef exporter in the world, and our president, prime minister, is proud of that. And yet he doesn't eat the meat. So it's so much hypocrisy there. But this is Kali Yuga. Heart of the mullah and his associates, and then took their respective seats. The setting was extraordinary to behold. I'm waiting for someone to do a painting of this. I've seen a sketch of it, but it'd be nice to have a painting with the horses and the Muslims with their fine robes, and then the 4 saintly Vaishnavas, and then all the Hindu people have come to listen, the followers. This is all situated in the temple of Vishnu Priya, in the courtyard of Vishnu Priya. This was the setting. He was having a festival to celebrate Vishnu Priya in the temple. That's why he asked for all these different Vaishnavas to come. And there's many things in this chapter. The setting was extraordinary to behold. On one side sat 50 well-dressed Muslim scholars with white beards, with their majestic, decorated stallions tethered behind them. On the other side, everyone rode horses in those days, right? This road right here behind us, Bhaktivinoda Thakur would have ridden his horse to the Ganga, when he became elderly, or he would have taken a carriage, or he would have taken a palanquin. I mean, this was the mode of transport. The setting was extraordinary to behold, yes. On the other side, 4 Vaishnavas of divine appearance sat in a humble mood. With great anticipation, many Hindus came and sat behind them. Of course, the word Hindu is not actually in any Vedic scripture at all. It's what the Muslims call those on the other side of the Sindhu River. But there isn't actually any mention of Hindu in Shastra. But in this Shastra, there is, because it's bringing it up to 2023, where we are now today. So always when we're hearing the spiritual topics, we're relating it to today. How can this help support my life today? How can I progress today with this knowledge? Not just put it to sleep in some story place in the mind, but how can we act on it, embrace it? With great anticipation, many Hindus came and sat behind them. Many others gathered there as well, taking seats nearby. Now we start from today here. Pandit Gaurachandra was the first to speak. He inquired, "O great souls, why have you summoned such insignificant people as ourselves?" The Vaishnavas always have to project this humble mood because they are always seeing the greatness of Krishna. So this is genuine. This is not like I'm just pretending to be humble. I mean, if someone is realized even a little bit in the greatness of the Lord, he instantly appreciates the insignificance of himself, right? Immediately. So it's not just a make-believe show of humility. They were genuinely humble, and they were seeing the super soul in the hearts of all these Muslims at the same time. Mullah Badruddin Sahib humbly replied, "Salam. We desire to ask a few questions." Pandit Gaurachandra said, "What knowledge might we have that can possibly answer your erudite questions?" Again, it's not just flattery. It's respectful behavior. People like respect. They respond. If you respect someone, he'll respond with respect to you. And then the topic to be spoken about can be approached respectfully. Respect is a symptom of love also. If you're respectful with someone, that's a quality of love. So this respect is so important. I mean, I know in the Western world, this has to be really learnt more and more and more. We are learning so much by Prabhupada's teachings, by my Gurudev's teachings, how to sit in a respectable behavior and behave with each other. So important. Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives a whole chapter 8. What is Kanishta? What is Madhyam? How do they behave with each other, etc.? Badruddin Sahib came a little closer and said, "Brothers, the Devas and Devis have been worshipped in Hindu society since ancient times. Now, so this is interesting because in the last chapter he established how ancient were the Devas and Devis. Now we see in our Quran Sharif that Allah is one, not two, and that he has no form. It is an offense to make an image of him and worship it." In other words, they all actually are like Brahmavadis. What's the difference between Brahmavadi and Mayavad?
One is theist and other is atheist.
Huh?
One is theist,
Theist.
atheist and
Atheist, yes. Atheist
and theist.
and theist. Yes, correct. A Brahmavadi is a theist. He believes in the Supreme, but he doesn't give him a form. He believes in the power of God, but he can't, his mind won't accept a personal form of God. This is what the whole chapter is going to be about. This inability to accept God as a form. Perhaps when you first heard of Krishna consciousness, maybe in your childhood you prayed to God, but did you know who God was? You know, we don't know who God is until we come in contact with Krishna consciousness. We have no idea who is God. Even if you're born in this country, you can still grow up not knowing who is God. You might have the Advaita philosophy, this oneness of Sankaracharya, they're influencing. What is the main hope of most people in India is moksha. Where is Krishna in the equation of moksha? Where is he? He's not there. It's like the Devas. The Devas don't want to get with Krishna. We were just reading in our Bhagavatam the story of Vritrasura. And when Lord Brahma, he tells Indra to go and beg from this yogi, Dadichi, for the bones of his body to make the thunderbolt to kill Vritrasura. So they come to Dadichi, and Dadichi is a Brahmavad. He's realized he worships Lord Shiva, and he's realized the Brahman. So he's not interested in any material rewards, and he very easily gives up his body, but he's not giving his body up to Krishna. So the result of him giving up his body is that he will merge into the Brahman. That's a neutral zone, Shantaras. What's that? Brahmabhuta Prasanatma na sochati na kanchati. That's the condition of the consciousness in the Brahmajyoti. Quran Sharif, that Allah is one, not two, that he has no form. It is an offense to make an image of him and worship it. So in other words, they're completely nirvisheshvadis, but they have a mood of devotion. So they're not Mayavadis. This is a big distinction. I have a doubt about this issue, and I have consulted many Brahmin Pandits in the hope of resolving it. So again, he's very respectful. Those Pandits replied that Allah is actually formless. However, one cannot possibly conceive of that which has no form. How can you worship something that has no form? It's like the Buddhists, they worship the void in the sky, in a sense. They worship nirvana for their annihilation of their own false ego. That's why they can actually merge into the Brahman, because they take away all the qualities of themselves in their pursuit. All their qualities become dissolved, and then they can merge into the Brahman. That was the same with Dadichi. That was the path that he took. Many yogis take this path. They dissolve the gross self is simply, and then the subtle self, they dissolve all those desires too. But they don't have the Krishna connection. They don't have the relationship. Principally, they don't have seva, because it's the seva that gives the juice. It's the seva that gives the anand, the bliss in the heart of the sadhak. When the sadhak is performing, I mean, you might be speaking or preaching or playing the mridanga or doing so many things, but it's not in a mood of seva to Krishna. We discussed this the other day. It can be pratibimba, a mood to glorify yourself, or if it's chaya, at least it's connected to Krishna. But it's a gradual evolution of consciousness to come to this place of Shuddha Bhakti. See the whole step-by-step process. It's not just so simple. It has to be carefully, methodically understood. And only then, when you're performing your Harinam, for example, you should know that unless you're focusing on Krishna and serving Krishna with your Harinam, then your Harinam is Nam Aparad or Nam Abas. That's what it is. It's not Shuddhanam. So it's not going to take you to a blissful place. My Gurudev used to be amazed when he was traveling in the Western world. So many devotees, hundreds. They weren't chanting Shuddhanam, but they were still strictly chanting. They were chanting because they had belief in the holy name. So my Gurudev was very happy that they were progressing like that. But still they had to make progress to come to Shuddhanam.
It might take many lifetimes.
Hopefully not. Yes, it might, but now we're discussing this. So once you hear it, then are we going to be intelligent enough to put it into action? Are we going to chant very loudly so we hear? Actually, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada said you should chant loudly enough to hear yourself. At least hear the sound vibration, because everything ultimately is in sound. Sound is the most subtle element in this world. And ultimately, this is coming from Golokera Premadana, Harinama Sankirtan. It's coming from Golok. The sound vibration of Krishna's flute is coming through there. So we have to, it's work, it's seva, but seva towards Krishna, to please him. Those Pandits replied that Allah is actually formless. However, one cannot possibly conceive of that which has no form. So he's going to explain this. He's going to say that you make a form because you can't conceive of something formless. So you imagine, it's an imagined form. That's what his criticism is of the deities. Because this festival today that they're celebrating is celebrating the Vishnu Priya, the deity that she worshipped of Sachinandan Gaurahari. She worshipped this deity of Mahaprabhu with the tears of her eyes daily. She would take the grains and she would chant different Hare Krishna mantra, and with every grain she would cook just those grains that she had chanted, and then she would wash those grains with her tears, and then she would cook them, give half to Mother Sachi, take a quarter for herself and a quarter for the Sevak, Ishan. And that's how they survived. So this deity that she worshipped of Mahaprabhu was there being celebrated on this particular occasion. Therefore, one should first make an imaginary form of Allah and meditate upon him by worshipping that form. This is his question. Is it imaginary? However, I am not satisfied with this answer, because creating an imaginary form of Allah is the work of Satan. It is known as Bhut, and it is completely forbidden to worship it. Far from pleasing Allah, such worship only makes one subject to his punishment. We have heard that your original preceptor, Sri Chaitanya Dev, corrected all the faults in Hindu Dharma. Yet his Sampradaya also makes